I think that TPRS as a method is a really good one. And if they've improved on it, I'm very interested to see what the improvement. So he's going to talk about, TPRS as we know it, and the innovations of TPRS. And he's talking from the experience of actually teaching people using it, which is really cool. Because he's got the theory and the practice, and apparently he's taught himself a fair bit of languages as well. He was just speaking some quite good passable Farsi. My Farsi is very limited as well. It's something I know. I know passively more than I can speak, which is not an unusual thing. You look at a really well done TPRS class, it's cool because essentially there's this story that is taking shape and everybody's contributing in some way to it. Nobody was teaching this way when I was in school or anything like that, but I had the experience at the Polyglot Gathering, the online one. Another language-related YouTube creator, she has a channel called Things You Should Know About Arabic. She did a sort of a TPRS style Arabic lesson, where everybody was sort of adding a little bit to the story and stuff like that. And it was really cool. And I surprised myself because my Arabic is not Flash. That is a language I have very little confidence in, but I managed it. Actually, with the help of actually listening to this story. Hey, joke.
So one of the reasons I love TPRS 2.0, actually two reasons, is number one, it builds student confidence.
That's key. That is absolutely essential. Because one of the big barriers to speaking that is just not linguistic in nature, not to do with acquisition itself, is the fear of messing it up. And anything that helps build the confidence there so that you eliminate that barrier is going to speed up speaking. And creating, this is a strategy I've heard in other contexts where it's creating easy wins, creating small wins, because moving from success is very helpful in, it's a powerful motivator. If anyone was ever asking me advice for teaching, which is something I have to say I have very little experience with, I would say learn a language. Because that is such an important thing, because you have to know what you're actually, the experience that you're creating has to be one that actually makes some sense to you from the perspective of trying to actually.
Pero no toco la puerta porque Kim Jong-un abre la puerta desnudo.
Una imagen mental que no me hacía falta.
Kim Jong-un dice a George, ¿quieres Coca-Cola? George le dice sí. Kim Jong-un le dice, súbete. Y luego los dos se bañan en la Coca-Cola.
Notice he used bañarse correctly. That's that is a grammatical thing that actually takes some getting used to if you're starting from English. Because we just say bathe, whether you're doing it to yourself, whether you're doing it to somebody else.
Y toman la Coca-Cola y lavan sus pelos.
하는 몬스님께서 크나큰 심장의 자비를 보여서 이제 짐양놈에게 코카콜라를 제공하시었습니다.
Buenos dias. Hi, my name is Jeff Brown.
And Jeff, we're gonna just get yours. Oh, that is the maximum screen resolution for this.
And I'm here to talk to you about TPRS 2.0 and why I think TPRS 2.0 is a game changer. So a little about me. I am a Spanish teacher, profesor de español, at Orange Coast College in Costa Mesa, California. I've been using TPRS for the last 29, 30 years, and I just discovered TPRS 2.0. Well, I discovered it about two.
Okay. I haven't actually looked at this channel before. I have to say, Spanish pronunciation sounds quite good so far. So, vamos a ver.
2 years ago, and the last semester, my last semester teaching my Spanish, my beginning Spanish students, I had the best results I have ever seen. I am absolutely blown away by their achievement, the results, their ability to speak Spanish without hesitation, correctly and accurately, and I'm here to talk to you.
Okay, this sounds extremely promising, and I like he's talking about this in terms of he's done practical experiments with it. So, I mean, I'm very interested to hear his results, and also interested to hear how this differs from TPRS as I know it, or maybe it is TPRS as I know it, because I haven't really looked too heavily into TPRS. Just enough to know it seems like a method that makes a fair bit of sense. Yeah, he speaks very clear English as well, so, like, for English learners, he's made this quite accessible in that regard.
About TPRS 2.0, and check this out, not only am I going to talk about TPRS 2.0, I'm going to talk about TPRS 1.0,
good.
Traditional teaching methods, and as a bonus, I filmed my students at the end of the semester. So I gave my students an oral exam, and I gave them extra credit if they would allow me to film them. So not only am I going to talk to you about TPRS 2.0, but you're going to see some of the results of TPRS 2.0. But if you want to learn more about TPRS 2.0, I suggest you take workshops through TPRS Books or tprsbooks.com.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, thank you for bringing this to my attention, Orlando. This looks really good and sounds like an interesting channel. So, and also, I mean, one thing I just keep coming back to when we talk about teaching methods and language teachers, having that learner's perspective is just extremely important. And it sounds like he's got that.
I don't work for tprsbooks.com. They're not paying me to make this video. I just love TPRS 2.0. So if you want to learn more, you want to know more, they give workshops in person, they give workshops on Zoom, and they have a TPRS or NTPRS workshop every summer that I go to.
Let's say it. That could be Belarusian.
Okay, so a little bit more about me. Not only have I been teaching for the last 29, 30 years, but I'm a language student. I've been acquiring languages my entire life for the last 55 years.
The subtitles say that he's been doing this for 293 years, and I have to say, he's looking really good for that. I mean, definitely.
And so far, I've done 8 languages. Now, I don't speak all 8 languages fluently, but I do speak 3 or 4 fluently, semi-fluently, and the other 4, I do okay. So the last 2 languages I've done were Farsi. I did about 200 hours of Farsi. Man Farsi, Kheli Farsi, Sokbet Mikonam, Dustaram, Kheli Dustaram El Farsi. And
Man, Farsi rokheli dostarem. I find Farsi is a language I've been trying to learn on and off for a while as well. Yeah, it's a cool language. It's this interesting sort of bridge between the Indo and the European bit of Indo-European languages, and I'm there for it.
And before that, I did Arabic. So I did 800 hours of Arabic. I did 800 hours of Arabic. أنا بتكلم العربي كويس جدا. رحت مصر تعلمت العربي في مصر. كويس قوي. So what is TPRS? What is TPRS 1.0 and what is TPRS 2.0? So for those of you who don't know, if you're brand new to TPRS, TPRS stands for Teaching Proficiency Through Reading and Storytelling, with an emphasis on storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, and when you look at a really well done TPRS class, I mean, it's cool because essentially there's like this story that is taking shape and everybody's contributing in some way to it. Nobody was teaching this way when I was like in school or anything like that, but I had the experience at the Polyglot Gathering, the online one. Another language-related YouTube creator, she has a channel called Things You Should Know About Arabic. She did a sort of a TPRS style Arabic lesson where everybody was sort of adding a little bit to the story and stuff like that. And it was really cool. And I surprised myself because my Arabic is not Flash. That is a language I have very little confidence in, but I managed it. Actually, with the help of actually listening to this story. Hey, this is a video that Orlando Pimentel here has suggested. He was asking about TPRS 2.0, and I've never heard of TPRS 2.0. So we're about to learn what TPRS 2.0 is all about, because that sounds really cool. I think that TPRS as a method is a really good one, and if they've improved on it, I'm very interested to see what the improvements. So he's going to talk about, TPRS as we know it, and what the innovations of TPRS. And he's talking from the experience of actually teaching people using it, which is really cool. Because he's got the theory and the practice, and apparently he's taught himself a fair bit of languages as well. He was just speaking some quite good passable Farsi. My Farsi is very limited as well. It's something I know passively more than I can speak, which is not an unusual thing.
So what we do in a language course is we teach language through stories. And we try to make the craziest stories you have ever heard.
God, I so wish that anyone was thinking about this when I was in this way for teaching when I was in school. Because that entire style is you have to write, example sentences and stuff like that, spelling sentences or, example sentences in foreign language classes and stuff like that. And I was always on that page of writing just more interesting sentences. Like they wanted something like, die Kaffeetasse steht auf dem Tisch. Wo steht die Kaffeetasse? Wo steht die Kaffeetasse? Ja, auf dem Tisch. Ja, das ist ja faszinierend. And I would, or something like that. And my sentences were always something more like, 信じられないよ。あの野郎がコーヒーのマグカップを取り上がって東京まで運転して行ったんだ。Or something like that. I'd like to come up with weird-ass sentences.
Do co-creation, where the students are helping us create the stories. And we know that when students get involved and they help us make these crazy, ridiculous, stupid stories, they love it. Now, why do we want to make crazy, stupid?
We watched on this stream months and months ago, Zamani Zulu, who does input-based Zulu language learning. That's a language, as we know, as you may remember, that I've had quite an interest in. And I mean, it's great because actually the telling of the story reinforces, it helps kind of trigger passive knowledge that you've already got that you can't necessarily bring to mind. and the collaborating in it really, I find it very helpful.
Stupid stories. We make crazy, stupid stories because we know the brain craves novelty. So
Yes.
we want to just create
Yes.
these great stories, crazy stories. And then with TPRS 1.0,
Okay, I like this guy.
most of the time, we didn't have students retell the stories. I've been doing this for about 30 years, and TPRS 1.0, I had students retell the stories, but it was usually about maybe 10% of the students, just a little part of the students. Some of the students could retell the story. The majority of the students could not retell.
Okay, so, that's what I was trying to figure out, whether he was talking about ability or whether the story just wasn't quite interesting enough for somebody to want to go through it a second time. Okay.
Tell the story, and you know what? That's okay. Because language acquisition is all about input. And I proved in my video about Arabic acquisition that you don't need to speak the language to acquire the language. And in fact, I did 800 hours of Arabic. I only spoke Arabic about 10% of the time. 80 hours.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have enough stuff built up in your brain, enough input in there to really be able to actually produce anything. The receptive part comes before the productive part. You've got to actually have the words in order to say the words. You've got to actually have the syntax and stuff like that really well, you know, you have to have those pathways really well paved in your brain. Paved pathways, I don't know that that works. In order to actually be able to use them
Hours,
yourself.
and I did another, what is that, 720 hours of just acquisition. So for TPRS 1.0, we would tell these great stories, crazy stories, and sometimes we would have the students retell the stories. Now in my advanced classes, sure, I was having the students retell the stories more. And there's a lot of students, there's a lot of teachers who have their students retell the stories. But at one point, I just said, you know what, this is way too hard.
Yeah, we're in Ukraine someplace.
So now we go to TPRS 2.0. What is TPRS 2.0? Well, first of all, TPRS 2.0 is 10 times slower than TPRS 1.0. It is so much slower than TPRS 1.0.
Okay. Now I'm interested in what he means by slower.
Tell stories, but we tell them in very small, manageable chunks. So I use TPRSbooks.com slides, and I tell very little chunks. So in TPRS 2.0, we tell stories, but we tell very little, small chunks of the stories, and then we ask students to retell those small chunks. And what we found is 100% of the students can retell those chunks.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Because a big part of what goes on, it has to do with the percentage of what you're able to actually understand, what you're actually able to comprehend. So if you're breaking it down into smaller chunks, by definition, there's a better chance that you will have a higher percentage of comprehension. You know, maybe even 100%. So, you know, if you're breaking it down like that into, I mean, I'm interested to see what that looks like in practice, what kind of chunks we're talking about. That should actually increase the percentage of comprehension and therefore increase the percentage of, you know, actual sort of implicit learning that helps you go on to actually speak.
Just little chunks. 2 sentences, 3 sentences, 4 sentences, that's it. So with TPRS 1.0, I was doing 4, 5, 6 sentences. I was doing 7, 8, 9, 10 sentences for these elaborate stories, and students just weren't able to retell the story. And I thought, oh, that's okay. I did the same thing in Arabic. It's perfectly fine. No, it's not. It's not, because the whole class can't produce the language at the same level. So what we do is we slow it down 90% or 80% or whatever, and then we just tell these little stories, little chunk of a story, and then we ask the student to retell the story. And we'll work on that little chunk. I did a little chunk recently for an hour. I think we did 3 or 4 sentences for 1 hour. We did a story about George. I just started a new class. George lives in Big Ugly, West Virginia. He's from Unidas, Louisiana. And
yeah, this is a great recommendation. Thank you for this. I like it when people actually have suggestions for things we can look at, because then I know at least somebody's definitely going to be interested in what I've picked. I've got some other stuff we're going to look at as well, but this is a great one to start out with. And seriously, like, oh wait a second, Rovereto. So this is great.
We spent an hour, maybe more than an hour, just on those 2 or 3 things, and we had students retell just that little part. Remember, TPRS 2.0 is all inclusive. We're getting all the students to retell these little teeny chunks of a story. Now, what do we do when they've nailed the chunk? Well, first of all, we have a barometer student. So I've always used barometer.
Interesting. Chunk nailing.
Barometer students. Lots of teachers use barometer students. A barometer student is the student that we choose. We're not going to go on until that student is ready.
Okay, interesting. Interesting technique. That makes sense. Because you want to make sure that everybody's there, and that you don't have. Otherwise, you've got a situation where there's 1 or 2 people who are just increasingly falling behind. So yeah, that makes sense.
So I'm not going to go on until my barometer student is ready. What do we do next? We up the story. We add to the story. We ask, where does George work? George works in Walmart in the Penguin department. George works at Kentucky Fried Chicken in the drive-through. That's.
I mean, I don't want a Walmart Penguin. I think Walmart Penguins would probably be shit.
In a tower on top of Kentucky Fried Chicken. We just add stupid and crazy stuff. And we are spending hours and hours and hours on these little teeny chunks. One of the reasons I had such success last semester is because we did one story for 12 weeks. We just kept adding and adding and adding to the story. That was our story about George. I stopped it 4 weeks before the semester was over because I wanted to add a girl as the main character. So George was first. We did Elena second. We had lots of characters, lots of boys and girls in all of our stories, but our main character was George.
Okay, I mean, this is cool, yeah, and I mean, this is the thing about the story aspect of TPRS. I mean, stories, I've talked about this, I actually have a video on this, because Natural Languages did a thing on it, and I did a react to it, because it's such just a great thing, is that it's, you can find it, it's in Spanish, it's called Lo cuento todo lo puede, because, or, stories can do anything. I mean, you can potentially, even if you feel like it's running to ground, you can find some new thing to inject into it. I mean, if it's interesting enough, people can go for it for ages. It's really humid here too, and hot.
That our next character was Elena. So at the end of this video, you're going to see my students retell the story of either George or Elena. They got to choose.
Neat.
So one of the reasons I love TPRS 2.0, actually 2 reasons, is number 1, it builds student confidence.
That's key. That is absolutely essential. Because one of the big barriers to speaking that is just not linguistic in nature, not to do with acquisition itself, is the fear of messing it up. And anything that helps build the confidence there, so that you eliminate that barrier, is going to speed up speaking. And creating, this is a strategy I've heard in other contexts, where it's like creating easy wins, creating small wins, because moving from success is very helpful in, it's a powerful motivator. Orlando, you just had an idea that I think would be really cool. I mean, like one of these old school like text-based RPGs. Well, maybe text and image-based actually. And the idea is that it's for language, and it's an open universe, so you can just keep on putting all sorts of random stuff in there, and it's for language acquisition. I think that's a cool idea. I think that's something. Maybe somebody's already done something with it, and I have no idea. But if nobody's done anything with it, that idea would rock. Actually, legal.
Never seen student confidence at the levels as I did last semester. The student level confidence was off the charts. They could all tell the story from beginning to end. They were happy. They were producing. Yep. The vibration, the energy in the class was phenomenal. And I have never seen that ever. And I think the reason is we're building confidence. We are absolutely building confidence. We have every student in the class retelling little chunk, next chunk, and we're adding. This is a story, not just a chunk. That student is retelling half a story, 3/4 of a story, eventually the whole story. So the confidence that those students are getting by being able to speak the language is phenomenal. So another reason I love TPRS 2.0 is what Blaine Ray calls language mapping. So in my opinion, what I thought is we're building this base by doing these little chunks, chunk, adding our little, and just keep working them and scrubbing them over and over again. I saw it as a base. We're base building. We're building this really, really powerful base of the most important words in any language. The Sweet 16, the most important 100, 200, if you will.
Okay, I hope he gets into more detail about what this concept of language mapping is. I feel like it's probably something that I'm familiar with just from learning, but I would like to have some detail on that.
To myself, we're building this incredible base that's so powerful. And then I wrote to Blaine Ray, I talked to Blaine Ray, and he calls it.
I mean, this guy seems like he would be fun to learn from. I mean, he's very enthusiastic about this stuff, and I like that. He clearly, Selbstvertrauen. Ja, man baut damit Selbstvertrauen. Dann traut man sich, das Maul aufzureißen. Und das ist ja beim Sprechen ja wichtig. Also, wenn die Fresse nicht aufgeht, dann wird ja auch nicht gesprochen. Also das Selbstvertrauen ist da sehr, sehr wichtig. Essa confianza. Te sama doверие.
Language mapping. So what's happening is in their brain, we're starting with this little character, George or Elena, and everything is connected. Everything is connected to George or Elena or our parallel characters, etc. And the language mapping we're doing is just phenomenal. So when the student wants to recall the word, where is it? It's exactly where he or she put it.
Okay, so we're talking about creating associations. We're like talking about sort of engineering word associations to make recall better. I think that's what he's talking about. I think that's the, and I mean, that makes sense. That's a great strategy.
So that's what Blaine calls language mapping. I call base building. It's absolutely phenomenal. I am blown away.
It's funny, base building means something rather different.
The magic of TPRS 2.0 is not only do we have students describe the situation, but the secret sauce is that we have them become the characters in the story. So let me explain how that works.
That easy wins thing, which is a big part of what TPRS 2.0 seems to be based on. Incidentally, I mean, this gets into this gets into some territory that's mostly the other channel, but that's for like organizing. That's also good if you can find ways to gain, small confidence building victories. So, something easy. That builds the motivation to do the bigger stuff. I mean, that's just a good strategy all around, whatever you're doing.
Basically, we tell this story, George, Elena, whatever, and then we have the students become the main character, and we have the students retell the story in the first person. So for the first week or the first day, we're saying there's a boy, his name's George. He lives in Big Ugly, West Virginia. He's from Unidas, Louisiana. And then the next day, or the same day, we have the students become the first person. We say, okay, you know what? You're George. You're George. Now describe the story in the first person. So they have to say, I'm George. I live in Big Ugly, West Virginia. I'm from Unidas, Louisiana. And so what we do is
Incidentally, Big Ugly is an actual place name in West Virginia. There's a creek called Big Ugly Creek. They have some interesting names of places. I remember first time I ever went to West Virginia on the way to North Carolina years and years ago. We ran across I believe in Charleston, a hot dog place called Sanitary Hot Dog, which is like, I don't want that to be the unique selling point. That doesn't say very flattering things about the other hot dogs. I guess that actually isn't a bad one. Like, come to Sanitary Hot Dog, we wash our hands. But yeah, Big Ugly is a legit place name.
Do that throughout the story. But not only do we do the first person, the third person, which we start with, we do the second person as well. So now I tell them, okay, now I'm George. Tell me about me. And I say, Johnny George or Jeffrey George, tell me about me. Now they have to practice the second person. And eventually we put two people in the story. We put a student in the story. We put another person in the story. We want to practice the first person plural. So tell me about you and George. So then they have to say, oh, George and I live in Big Ugly, West Virginia, but we are from Unidas, Louisiana. So that's how we're getting tons and tons of practice. First, second, third, first person plural, second person plural, third person plural. We're getting tons and tons of practice that TPRS 1.0 we rarely got to.
Yeah, so far everything about
So describe the situation.
This just sounds like a great method. Everything he's talking about breaking it down into the little chunks, the sort of perspective shifting, all that stuff. It just makes absolutely perfect sense to me.
Is brand new to TPRS 2.0. And what describe the situation means is we have students retell those small chunks. We have them tell one chunk or two chunks. We might even put three chunks together. At the end of the class, we've got, a 5-minute chunk or a 4-minute chunk. So describe the situation means we go around the room and we ask students to describe the situation, which means basically retell the chunk we're working on. And students, by doing that, build confidence. They can hear themselves speaking the language. They can hear their classmates speaking the language, and they're practicing the language. Is that output? Absolutely. Is it forced?
Okay, I'm gonna just drop this link into chat so everybody can find this chat. Everybody can find this channel because it's. I'm liking it. I have not actually seen this channel before, but I'm liking it. I'm liking his style. I'm liking the way he explains this. Because this is good from, he's explaining things that are good from a learner's perspective, from like a self-teaching perspective, but also from somebody who's trying to learn the best ways to teach. This is good. And he's done, language acquisition from both ends, which is important. And, I would say, if anyone was ever asking me advice for teaching, which is something I have to say I have very little experience with. I would say learn a language. Because that is such an important thing, because you have to know what you're actually, the experience that you're creating has to be one that actually makes some sense to you from the perspective of trying to actually learn.
Output? Absolutely. Does it build confidence? Absolutely. And I think it's necessary. I really do.
Oh, hang on. There were like.
So let me be totally honest. The first time I tried TPRS 2.0 was a total disaster. Oh my God, I feel so bad. So what happened was, I went to my first TPRS 2.0 workshop 2 years ago, and I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is it. I am ready. I'm going to try it. I am so excited. So a month later, a year ago or 2 years ago, I had my first attempt with a live class using TPRS 2.0, and it was a disaster. And the reason was way too fast. I went way too fast. I was teaching TPRS 2.0 like it was TPRS 1.0. I was doing 5, 6, 7, 8 sentence chunks, and I was just saying, okay, describe the situation. Okay, change it to the first person now. And the students were like, what? What's he wanting to do? And they just couldn't do it. I was like, oh my God, that's it. I'm going way too fast.
Yeah. I mean, this makes a lot of sense. I mean, especially because the thing is, this is all very cumulative. With language learning, it's very cumulative. So this is in Italy, and I'm trying to figure out where exactly in Italy. A24. Okay, we're looking for Avezzano and Capistrello. L'abbiamo trovato. Capistrello, sulla strada regionale 82. Okay, we got it. It wasn't in the. I saw mountains and, sort of posh resort kind of areas. Thought that, and I thought we must be in the north, but we're absolutely not. We are just outside of Rome. Okay, there's Avezzano. Wish they would make the small map a little bit bigger, actually. Ciampino. If you ever fly to Rome, if you ever fly out of Rome, don't do it via Ciampino. Ciampino is terrible. It is one of the worst airports I've been in. Tagliagozzo. E al sud. Sud di Tagliagozzo. Avezzane. Capistrello. 49.93. Not bad at all. Like, there's no place to sit in Ciampino. And, that gamble in an airport is always... There's the gamble about going through security or waiting because you're hungry, you want to get something to eat, and of course you don't know whether there's going to be something to eat after you go through security. But if you go through security, then you don't want to do it a second time because it's a huge fucking pain in the ass. And, well, I can tell you, eat before you go through security if you go to Ciampino, because there's nothing. There are vending machines, and there is no place to sit. Absolute shite.
I've got to slow down 10 times than I've ever taught. So right now with TPRS 2.0, I am teaching 10 times slower than I have ever taught. The problems with TPRS 1.0 and traditional teaching are basically the same. It's way too fast. Too fast, too soon, too much. Now, are there good TPRS 1.0 teachers out there? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do they go slow? Absolutely.
And I mean, one thing to note is slow is a relative concept. Slow, with the speed we're talking about, is the sort of processing speed of the people who are doing the learning. Slow, you're going slow or fast relative to how quickly they're picking it up, fundamentally.
So TPRS 1.0 is still good. I think the big difference between 1.0 and 2.0 is the fact that we're having the students describe the situation all the time, continuously with these little chunks, and we're changing from first person, second person, third person by inserting the student in the story or having the students become the main characters themselves.
The mailboxes tell me that.
I think the biggest problem with traditional teaching is it's rocket speed fast. I think it's way too fast for most students. Now, can some students acquire the language in traditional methods, traditional teaching? Yeah, I did.
I will say, having acquired a fair number of languages, I have never acquired shit through the traditional methods. Every single bit of acquisition, even languages that I actually also had courses that were being taught in traditional methods, the actual acquisition, the actual learning process was happening elsewhere. It's a coincidental byproduct of the
It's possible,
teaching.
but I think only the top 10%. I think we're only getting the top 10%, and the reason is the same. It's always been the same. Too fast, too much, too soon.
Long Spring Kojic.
So right now, you're going to see the results of TPRS 2.0. Once again, last semester, I gave my students an oral final exam, and many of them allowed me to film them during this exam. So their assignment was they could retell the story, the George story, or the Elena story. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking...
Okay, I mean, as exams go, I think that's a pretty good one, because that's one where, like, literally every single thing that's going on is really preparing you for it.
Well, they can tell stories, but can they speak the language? Sure, they can speak about themselves. We do lots of activities that are not story related, and they can tell stories. But the important thing I want you to watch is look at the confidence, look at the lack of hesitation, and look at the accuracy. Now, are all of them going to be perfect or do well? No, of course not. Are we going to have a range? Of course, you're going to see a range,
Okay,
a
I can't
large
wait.
range.
I'm
But
actually
again,
quite excited to see what
look at
kind
the
of results
confidence
it's getting.
level, look at the lack of hesitation, and look at the accuracy.
Okay, I assume these must be first-year students of Spanish then.
Hola a todos, mi nombre es Ryan. En mi clase me llamo Cabezón porque tengo una cabeza muy grande. Y,
Okay, I mean, already pretty nice pronunciation. One little grammatical error, but I mean, he is I mean, it's true. There is very little hesitation.
un poco sobre mí. Tengo 24 años. Yo encanta aprender idiomas. Yo encanta aprender.
Yeah, I mean, again, well, we've some grammatical mistakes, but you can understand that. I mean, that's it should be me encanta aprender idioma. It's an impersonal construct, but any Spanish speaker is going to understand what he just said. And the more he hears people speak in Spanish, the more he's going to work out, the more that sort of correction will happen.
Ahora yo aprendo 3 idiomas, vietnamita y español y francés. Pero en mi opinión, español es la idioma más bonita.
Yeah, like, I mean, again, there are grammatical mistakes and stuff like that, but he's made himself understood. Like, everything he said, is totally understandable. And one thing to know, I mean, and I get on this a lot, I mean, especially when we're looking at that English for Everyone channel, which is just, God, painful on so many levels, but in sort of a weird, almost comical way. At least I think so. But that sort of explicit error correction does not really achieve much. You correct your grammar through reading, especially reading, pleasure reading. And if he's able to make that much sense speaking, chances are his understanding is considerably higher.
Hay una chica que se llama Elena.
잘 지냈어?
Y Elena vive en Maui, una isla de Hawái. Vive en un casita en un árbol en la playa.
I mean, again, let's just note, these are first-year students, apparently. I mean, I'm guessing from the fact that it's only 35 hours, which is not a lot. And I would say this is actually a pretty good result for beginners.
Y en su casita hay 6
We are looking at a video suggested by Orlando Pimentel, talking about TPRS 2.0. Now, if you haven't heard of TPRS, that's Teaching Proficiency Through Reading and Storytelling. And Orlando was wondering what my take on it was, and my take on it was, I've never heard of TPRS 2.0. I'm interested to know what it is. And so this is Polyglot a Lot, a channel that I had not previously heard of, but I now definitely recommend. I mean, I like his style. He actually teaches Spanish. And so he's teaching, and these students, for a little bit of extra credit, were willing to be filmed while they did their final, oral exams. These are first-year students. They've done, 35 hours. And this is the first one you're coming in for. And as a Spanish speaker, I'll say I understand every word he's saying, even though, I mean, the grammar isn't quite there. But, I mean, for, somebody who's just beginning to be able to speak this confidently, spontaneously, is already quite an achievement on level.
dormitorios y 6 baños, pero no hay cocina.
Hay lugar para cagar, pero no para cocinar.
Entonces, Elena necesita ir a la Panda Express, porque en Panda Express tiene comida, sí. Y en Panda Express, Elena come.
I mean, and one thing, he's not switching back. He's staying in the language. And that's huge. Because the more you can actually stay in it, the more you can draw on resources within the language, the more used to drawing on those resources you get, and the easier it becomes to keep going, to keep advancing. He's not switching over to English.
Come. Come y va al baño en Panda Express. Y en Panda Express hay un dueño. Hay un dueño que se llama Panda y Panda es el dueño y el presidente de Panda Express.
Yo soy presidente y dueño de Panda Express. Sí, yo tengo un restaurante. Yo inventé Panda Express.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so everything the guy we just saw, Cabezon, apparently is his nickname, which means big head, was in the present tense, but I mean, he's using the preterit here. So, I mean, and he's got, and again, we're talking, these are beginners who've had 35 hours with this TPRS 2.0. That is the standard to judge by, and I have to say, I mean, good results. They're beginners. There's a lot to work on, but they're managing this quite well.
Yo trabajo y como y voy a baño.
Ucha, la vida fome, weón. Pega, comida, cagadera.
y limpio en Panda Express. Yo limpio todo, limpio Panda Express y limpio mi restaurante baños. Yo no vaca. ¿Por qué? Porque yo soy dueño de Panda Express. Sí.
Yeah, like, I mean, again, grammatically, there's a lot to work on. There's some pronunciation stuff as well. But he's, Orlando, você percebe espanhol, não? Tudo que está dizendo é compreensível, totalmente compreensível. Para um principiante é super legal.
Sí, no vaga, no vaga. Elena va a Omaha, Nebraska.
¿Qué, weón?
Panda y Elena van al baño en la restaurante.
Wow, I mean, everybody's focusing. Wow, everybody's focusing on it.
Y también, también Panda limpia el baño y limpia todo. Elena necesita pagar para sus comidas.
Yeah, exactly. They're being filmed and they're doing an exam and they're beginners. And from the standpoint of beginners, being able to speak spontaneously like this, that's good, actually. Like, I mean, that says a lot for the method as well.
Su comida. Y Panda no paga para Panda, es el dueño de Panda Express. Y so después Elena va a...
I mean, like, one English word there. That we've heard one reversion to English in this whole thing so far. That, I mean, that's big.
Omaha, Nebraska para Elena quiere conseguir cirugía plástica.
¿Y va Nebraska para esa weá? La puta la historia rara, weón.
En Panda Express
Totally.
hay un baño porque Panda no tiene dinero. Un baño para hombre y
And I mean, I'm just judging from the accents, he's teaching people of varying language backgrounds already. Like, I mean, so...
mujeres. Para todos. Panda trabaja limpia, va a baño.
This is the Panda and Elena drinking game right here. If a student talks about, like, a character having a dump, drink.
Cocina y come, pero Panda no paga porque es un dueño y presidente. Elena paga. Elena está en Omaha, Nebraska, porque Elena visita Dr. Mu. Dr. Mu es una vaca y doctora. Trabaja en Omaha, Nebraska. Dr. Mu hace cirugía de plástica, hace todo. Ella quiere.
Yeah, I mean, we're not getting much of a recommendation for this Panda Express. I mean, it sounds like it's more a place to drop off your food than to... Well, apparently the owner is the only person who actually works there.
Cirugía plástica, ella quiere mucha, quiere ceño más grande y nariz más grande y liposucción y nalgas más grande también.
Mucha, weón.
Y
Y todo esto lo hace en Omaha, Nebraska, weón.
en Omaha, Nebraska hay una doctora, muy famosa doctora, es doctora Mu, es una doctora de cirugía plástica y una vaca. Doctora Mu hace todo las
Yeah, I'm guessing that we have various native speakers of Vietnamese in here. I mean, the accent feels Vietnamese because Vietnamese has this staccato quality to it. I mean, not staccato, more like pizzicato. I'm guessing she said big butt, nalgas grandes, with a straight face specifically because they've been talking about this apparently every day in the class.
cirugía plástica. En su oficina está en Omaha, Nebraska. En su oficina hay un asistente que se llama Rashid.
Well, see, this is what makes it memorable. I mean, it's memorable because it's funny, because it's weird. It is a weird ass story. Yeah, it's true. I mean, this is important, and it's because you need it to be memorable if you're going to process it. It has to be compelling. You have to know, like, I mean, compelling input is a very key thing. And so, and compelling really comes down to, do you care what happens next? Do you want to know what's going to happen next? And as like absolutely silly as hell as this story is, yes, actually, I want to know what happens next. I want to know why Brad shit is. I forget who was Brad shit anyway. Doesn't matter even.
Y es un gato de Elena también. Rashid tiene un trabajo interesante que es duerme los pacientes con sus perros y su calientes aliento.
Okay, good job.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is true. This is like these are the total polar opposite, because you notice they're not going in there and going, eso no es correcto. No decimos Brad shit duerme a los pacientes. Decimos Brad shit adormece a los pacientes. Porque, because these are things that you can get. The fact that they're like at a beginning level and managing to do this much already that's an achievement. And the thing is, all that other stuff can come at some other time. All that other stuff, can be acquired like through listening and reading and all that sort of stuff. And you start to notice, oh, we have adormecer. In addition to dormir, they're related words. And you start to work out, your brain starts to make these connections and notice that this gets stuck at the beginning of words that are, other verbs, or they are adjectives and stuff like that. And you have this eser, which kind of seems to indicate like a gradual process that's going on related to whatever it's been stuck to. And you start to gradually, map these things. But they're at a very early point. Do you own a loofah? Oh God. Yes, this é uma profissão interessante. Anestesiólogo de pedo.
Yo soy
Flatulero. Anestesiólogo flatulero.
compadre. Vivo en Irvine.
Están en California, por eso.
Tengo un carro, tengo un Volkswagen Jetta. Trabajo y no tengo novia, no tengo esposa. ¿Y qué más? Yo tengo 42 años. Yo soy de Glendale. Okay, hay un chico, el chico es George. George está en Devil's Den, California. Pero tiene un problema. Quiere Coca-Cola, pero no hay Coca-Cola en California porque Que Cabezón tomó toda la Coca-Cola en McDonald's.
Pero no va a Panda Express porque la gente va a Panda Express para puro cagar.
George sabe que hay mucha Coca-Cola en Chicago porque hay una fábrica allí, una fábrica de Coca-Cola. Así que George va a Chicago. Va a la fábrica, toca la puerta, pero nada.
I mean, like, the confidence, the lack of hesitation is really good. I mean, it's true. I mean, I would say these are results.
Que la fábrica está cerrada. Oh no, George grita, vomita.
¿Eh?
Está
¿Falta de Coca-Cola, weón?
cerrada porque es un día de fiesta. Es el día de amistad. La chica de la clase de español. Ella es muy famosa porque inventó Coca-Cola en su casa, en su garaje de su casa con su tortuga Flash. Que George
Yeah, I mean, just look at all. I mean, this is just so much random shit. But I mean, that's what makes it memorable. That's what makes it useful, because you're gonna remember this way more than you're gonna remember.
George va a Cardi B, le dice, ¿tienes Coca-Cola? Ella le dice, no, tengo Pepsi.
Qué lamentable, weón. Qué tragedia, weón.
Ella tiene mucha Pepsi porque trabaja para Pepsi y gana un barril de Pepsi cada 2 minutos.
Okay, this feels like Bald Empanada. I feel like we're about to get into 20 yards of linen.
Es un modelo y un...
Yeah, I mean, and this is a confusing one for learners because it's una modelo. It's una modelo, which sounds so many different levels of wrong. If you've just gotten used to the idea that you can generally know that a word is masculine if it's got an O at the end of it, and then Spanish goes and gives you una modelo. So, I mean, that is a piece of like very confusing grammar for beginners, which these
una
are.
rapera para Pepsi. Tiene un jacuzzi con Pepsi caliente y ellos
Ugh, that was sticky.
nadan en el jacuzzi. George sabe que hay mucha Coca-Cola en Corea del Norte porque Kim Jong-un tiene mucha Coca-Cola.
Fun fact. In North Korea, the word for a soft drink is saido. Or tansan, or tansan tanmul.
Así que George va a Corea del Norte, camina a Los Ángeles, luego camina sobre el agua.
Swimming in hot Pepsi. In hot Pepsi. Like, no. I think I'll give that a miss. I mean, that'll make bits of you sticky that do not need to be sticky.
Agua a Corea del Norte. Camina sobre el agua porque es un santo.
Obvio. Yeah, I mean, see, this sticks out in your memory because this is an absolutely bloody ridiculous story.
En Corea del Norte, a la mansión de Kim Jong-un tiene una muralla alta. George escala la muralla y salta en el patio de la mansión. Pero hay un problema.
Sí, me imagino que hay un problema.
Muchos animales que defienden la mansión y a Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, I mean, Northern Korean transliterates foreign words differently. You will find a lot more double consonants generally in the North than the South. Tansantanmul literally means carboxylic acid sweet water.
Corea del Norte y la Coca-Cola. Hay pollos y patos. Los animales son pollos y patos. Y yo soy un animal. Yo soy paripollo. Yo defiendo a Kim Jong-un.
홍무들아 당종왕을 목숨으로 사수하자.
Nosotros atacamos a George.
Yeah, I mean, and they're not just pillars of this specific teacher. I mean, obviously they are pillars of this specific teacher. This is next level weirdness. But in terms of having the chunks of the language that you're acquiring be memorable, yes, party chicken. Sí, es el, bueno, yeah, and since he says it in English, it could be, well, since he's a chicken that apparently defends Kim Jong-un's house, the Kumsusan Palace, it could be party as in fiesta, or it could be party as in partido. El Partido Obrero de Corea. Eso es el puño del partido. Hangdak. Hangdak.
Pero George pelea muy bien. Pelea y me mata y mata a Donald, mi amigo Donald el Pato. Los con sus manos y su vomita. Los otros animales escapan.
Sad hood movie.
Luego George entra a la mansión en una ventana. Va al baño.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like lots of grammatical stuff that you could nitpick, but these are beginners that have this level of recall who could actually like go through this story, and I'm not seeing any jump cuts. Like jump cuts between the speakers, yes. Jump cuts between topics. But this is the live feed basically. And I would say they're doing pretty well.
Donde
this is a
está Kim Jong-un y la Coca-Cola. Pero no toca la puerta porque Kim Jong-un abre la puerta desnudo.
Una imagen mental que no me hacía falta.
Kim Jong-un dice a George, ¿quieres Coca-Cola? George le dice sí. Kim Jong-un le dice súbete. Y luego los dos se bañan en la Coca-Cola.
Like, notice he used bañarse correctly. I mean, that's that is a grammatical thing that actually takes some getting used to if you're starting from English. Is we just say bathe, whether you're doing it to yourself, whether you're doing it to somebody else.
Y toman la Coca-Cola y lavan sus pelos.
동야는 몬스님께서 크나큰 심장의 자비를 보여서 미제 짐양놈에게 코카콜라를 제공하시었습니다.
So that's it. I want to thank you.
I want to thank you, Orlando Pimentel, for recommending this. Because, I mean, this is good. And the results are good. So my opinion of TPRS 2.0 as he's explained it and he's demonstrated the results is, it makes perfect sense to me. And with that, I'm going to take a little bit of a bio break and we're going to get back and we'll look at some other stuff. And if anyone's got any other ideas, Any other suggestions? I want to hear them very much. But right now we're going to just have a little break. I will be right back. And I'm back. That was a great video. Thanks so much for recommending it. So, let's see, what else have we got?